Hello and welcome to the Scotland Rugby News podcast with me, your host, Bruce Aitchison from Happiness Egg-Shaped, and him, the editor of Scotland Rugby News, the one and the only Gavin Harper. Hello, sir. How are you?
Very well. Not so bad anyway. Busy old day with the squad announcement, but yeah, we're getting there now.
Busy old day. They send out a list of names and you have to write 800 words on it. Didn't give me this busy day nonsense. Well, I'm sporting a bunnet tonight, pal. It's Pennycook Rugby given to me by the one and the only Mark Blair, former Edinburgh, Borders, Ulster. And if you've been in his company for any longer than 5 minutes, you'll know that he also won the European Cup when he played with Ulster. If you're with him for 15 minutes, you'll have heard it 6 or 7 times. But he gave me the bunnet, and I've had to wear it tonight because whoever it is that pays the electricity bill and heating bill in this house, when he turn the heating on.
I heard a rumour that this is the same bill payer forced his family to all sit separately on flights home from Italy on holiday. Is that can you confirm or deny?
That's harsh. That is harsh. Well, Ryanair charge you if you want to sit together. And I think that money could be better spent somewhere else. And it's character building for your 13 and 15-year-old daughters to sit next to complete strangers on the flight and have to work the emergency doors because they're sitting at the wings. But it's, hey, they're no worse for it.
I'm sure. I hope the person that was sitting next to you for the 3-hour flight had headphones.
Well, do you know, I'm going to tell you this in a secret, and didn't tell this to my wife or my 2 daughters, but both ways to Italy and home again, the seat next to me was free.
Incredible. Not by design either. The person's taking one look and going, I've seen that. Happiness is egg-shaped guy.
On the way home, the guy sat down and I went, and I put my bag up, because let's face it, there's no room for it anywhere else. And I sat down and he got up straight away and walked 2 rows in front.
That set the tone for the rest of the flight.
And one of the reasons that we started late is because I had to go and take my trousers off because I've been wearing a belt all day and I'm just about cut in half. So I've now got my joggy bottoms on. I've got my
okay.
With Mossy when we were students. This is completely taking a turn. When we were students and we were going up and down the road to Gala and Mossy would drive and he'd have a car full of Gala players that were based in Edinburgh. And we were coming down and we used to have to stop in at Mossy's house on the way home because he would drop off his washing or pick up his washing. And his dad was class and he'd be on the couch and he'd caught his lunge in a boot suit. He'd be in his full trackie, his lunge in a boot suit. When he got home from work, he put on his lunge in a boot suit. Loved that. Saw Mossy in Tesco last night.
This has taken a very strange turn the first 3 minutes.
Yeah, but
we're trying to get back on track.
No, I'm high as a kite. I've just had my tea and I've now got, because it's cold in my house, I've got my coffee to keep me nice and warm, and I've had to put in one of the thermal cups because the house is that cold. It would be like an iced latte in no time at all, so it's keeping it nice and warm. Anyway, if you would like to get involved, comment on the Scotland squad. We're going to be talking all about selection and who Gregor's got in the squad. So post your comments, post your questions, let us know your views, because otherwise you're going to have to listen to me talking about how cold it is and how tight I am. But maybe that's what you're after. Maybe your questions will be more about my. I'll be like that Martin Lewis on the news. I'll tell you how to save money. Didn't turn your heating on and make your bairns sit next to strangers on Ryanair flights. So, big chap, what was the chat at the press conference?
Where to start, really? Sione Tuipulotu, new Scotland captain. I think that came a wee bit from left field. I didn't really see that coming. In fact, I was doing a bit of work this morning on building a story on the Scotland Rugby News site, and I had actually used a picture of Gregor and Finn together, which shows what I knew this morning. So yeah, I think Sione's. I think for this campaign, it certainly makes sense. He is available for all 4 games. Finn obviously wouldn't be able to play the Fiji game. And Gregor spoke a wee bit today. I'm not going to talk about the window. Gregor talked a wee bit today about, it's not just these 4 games. It's basically he wants to give it to Sione for the foreseeable. So, Yeah, look, he's done well.
On that, I didn't think that's a bad move. Now, I don't know what the conversation would be, and we're never going to know. But I'm not sure Finn will actually be that bothered, because he's still the one that's directing traffic. He's still the sort of marquee player. It's not going to change how he plays. I doubt it's going to dent his confidence. I think you almost gain another formal leader. I also think, with an eye on next summer, Sione being able to show leadership is maybe another tick in the box for him becoming a Lion.
Yeah, totally. And I think that, Finn's experienced enough that, as you say, he'll still be involved driving the team about. And I'm not sure that I don't like the co-captaincy model. I think it confuses things, and I think taking that pressure off both Finn and Rory Darge allows them to go and concentrate on winning their places in the team. I think the other thing is, I don't know how many times we've spoken about this over the last 4 or 5, 6 weeks, that Sione is one of the first names on the team sheet. Obviously, Finn is too, but he's somebody who has led well with when he's captained Glasgow. He captained Scotland A, I think, before.
The other bit is none of those three are going to be subbed off.
No, and that's it.
All three of those are 80-minute players. Now having a hooker as captain or a scrum half as captain, I think that's probably where the co-captain bit maybe comes in, because Ben Vellacott at Edinburgh isn't always going to be playing. So Ben Vellacott is a leader, but Gilco is an 80-minute, or sometimes he's not been actually, but you know what I mean? There's always going to be a captain on the field. But for Darge and Finn, they're going to play 80 minutes, and Sione's going to play 80 minutes. So you've actually got three designated leadership roles who are going to be on the field from 1 to 80.
Yeah, and I suppose in that respect, you could say, well, why not just leave it with one of Darge or Finn? But I think, reading between the lines, Gregor said, 2 or 3 times today that Darge Sione has excelled as a captain, and his level of performance has never dropped. I wonder if he feels the same way about Darge and the pressure that it brings. Captaining your club is one thing, but to be captain of your country, there's more external pressure. They have to speak to us, which I don't. But
Darge, there's a couple of things in the mix for Darge. One, he's still a pup, like he's still a young man. But the other thing is the position he plays. His head's in places where he's maybe not actually seeing a whole heap of what's going on. It's not an emotional position any more than any other, but his energy is largely on decision making in the moment. Is he going for the turnover? Is he making the tackle? Is he going for a jackal? Is he counter rucking? Like I didn't mind that, and he's probably, and I could be wrong because I don't know the kid and I've never been in a changing room with him, but I would imagine he's a follow me boys rather than a speech maker or a talker. Sione maybe just being that little bit detached, standing at centre, having a chat with the referee, gives him a bit more time, gives Darge a chance to gather himself and the forwards and focus on that role. And I would, development again, Darge and Finn have both had a crack at being co-captains. Right, lads, you're still vice-captains. You've still got a big role to play. You're hopefully better for that experience. But as you say, Sione's had it maintained, if not excelled. I mean, now everybody's talking about Sione.
Yeah, and I think just on the point you made there about, the speeches and stuff, Gregor's referenced in the past that Grant Gilchrist sets a lot of the emotion and the kind of tone of. But I also think Sione is heavily. Well, Gregor said as much today that Sione is heavily involved in those discussions and that kind of getting the team in the right place before big games, during training, during games. I think he's quite a composed character during a game. So I think from that point of view, yeah, I think that's and you know what? Actually, from our point of view, is in the media, is great because, we spoke to him a few weeks ago and he very openly declared his Lions intentions, which would have been easy for him to kind of brush off as I'm going to play
media
this
training.
And I don't want to talk about the Lions. He was very forth, kind of up front, and he was very up front after the World Cup, and he talked about how much he was hurting after the defeat to Ireland. But similarly, you see the passion and the kind of enthusiasm with which he plays for Scotland. He talked before about, I think he qualifies through his granny, who's from Greenock. And he's spoken before about, making that part of his family and that heritage proud. So, look, a big day for him and a big day for his family because his brother's in the squad for the first time.
It'll be interesting if Gregor, there is, I don't know, because looking at this squad, if it was just for one game, you'd probably be able to pick your 23. It's not, it's for 4 games. Fiji first up, you can discount a whole load of the players because they play out with Scotland. Portugal is possibly a chance to give the touring party for the summer another kick at the ball. Do we read the most into Australia and South Africa? Do they play the full team against Australia in the hope that they're battle hardened and ready for? Oh no, sorry, last game's Australia.
Yeah.
Sorry. So do we go full blown South Africa and then they get a bit of a rest before they hit Australia? That's probably where we are. You look at the squad and it's almost like a touring squad.
Yeah,
there are players in it that you could probably say they might feature against Portugal, but it's unlikely they'll feature against South Africa or Australia. They might feature against Fiji because they're local.
And I think that's it. I think, probably there are 5 uncapped players, but probably 3 or 4 of them might not have got in if this was New Zealand, South Africa, Australia, Fiji, say Argentina, So I think there's definitely an eye on, let's get some of the most promising players. I'm sure we'll talk about Freddy Douglas, probably the big surprise, but let's get these players into that environment, see what they're like, and actually, we're talking about the four senior games, but remember there's an A international as well against Chile that will serve as an opportunity for this squad. And I think my understanding is that Pete Horn will take, the non-selected to play Australia, and they'll add a few. But the crux of the A team is going to come, I think, from this squad today as well. So there are opportunities there. People might not win test caps, but somebody like a Freddy Douglas and Alex Samuel might go in and earn an A cap and actually spend 3 or 4 weeks with the senior squad and find out what that's like. And similarly, the coaches will find out a lot about the players.
Yeah, I think the Freddie Douglas one's obviously, when you look at it's a Scotland squad. So for Freddie Douglas to be selected, it is that's a bold move. But it has to be, come on, let's come and gain experience, because in future we're looking at you and, because you're looking at that and you're going, well, Hamish Watson's not in it. And he's playing for Edinburgh and Freddie's not. So it's absolutely Gregor tipping his hat to the future and come and gather some experience and learn from this squad and learn from the coaches and probably get a run out in the game. It'll be interesting to see if he features against Portugal maybe. It's unlikely he'll feature against Fiji because I think there's probably still enough in Glasgow and Edinburgh to play that first one. But delighted for him because he's a phenomenal player and his future's very, very bright. And him being alongside Darge can only be a good thing.
Totally,
and he's got Gilco and Jamie Ritchie, and there's a lot of experience in there. Being able to rub shoulders with the Fagersons can he be a bad thing?
Yeah, look, there's a piece coming up on the Scotland Rugby News site tonight. I think Freddie was involved with Scotland during the Six Nations. And I don't think he was taken too many backward steps. We'll put it that way. So there's more on that in that piece that'll be live later on. I think,
and no pressure on him, but that's what they said about Richie McCaw when he first came in. Richie McCaw upset a lot of folk.
Do you know, like when I spoke to Stuart Edwards, who coached Freddy right through kind of school earlier this year, he said, look, I think he's in a better place at this stage of his career than Hamish Watson. And Hamish Watson's a British Lion. So let's not get carried away. Let's see how he goes. He's still only 19, you know, but there's incredible potential there. And the fact that he's in a Scotland squad before he's played a single game for Edinburgh, I think shows how highly he's valued by Gregor and all the Scotland coaches.
Let's not get carried away, but I told you this week that Freddy, McConnell and Curry are going to play a game for Edinburgh at some point this season. That's going to be a back row for the future. That is
how incredible that might now happen before after Freddy's won his first cap.
Just class. So listen, let's pick the bones out of this. We're going to start where it's most important. The backs are. What are you laughing at?
We're going front row there.
Steady. Piano pushers, piano players. Let's go straight to the maestros. Obviously, Blair Kinghorn, like probably at the height of his powers. If you were picking a Lions now, Blair's going. He's flying. He looks happy. That can only be a good thing for Scotland. I don't think there's much doubt there. Finn, similar. Sione, you know, there's not a lot in there. Scrum half, I'm interested. I don't think there's any surprises, but it's going to be interesting for me to see how they use Dobie, Horn, White, Reid. There's 4 in there, isn't there?
I mean, Reid's a winger.
Reid's a winger. Sorry, Ali Price is there. There's 4 there. That's an Ali Price. If this was picked 3 weeks ago, he's maybe not there.
Yeah, I think that's it. And I think Gus Ward's the unlucky one, isn't he? That misses out.
Sorry, that's who I'm confusing Aaron Reid with.
Yeah, it's okay. Just generic Sale Sharks players. Yeah, I think that's an interesting one because I watched Sale a couple of weeks ago and I thought Gus Ward played really well. Then they generally had a bit of an off day against Northampton last weekend. And it looks like he's paid the price for a bit of a tough day at the office generally because, as you say, you know, it probably only the last 2 weeks Ali's really come back into a bit of form. I think as well, you know, if you're looking, probably Ben White actually hasn't played that much for Toulon, so probably George Horn, you know, much to your delight, is probably now the first choice, I would suspect.
You reckon? But I'm not sure about that.
I think that when you look at the 2 big games, I think he probably is still on the bench. But I wonder if
I think Ben White starts against the Springboks.
Yeah, I think that because he's probably his kicking game's slightly superior. But George will assume get the first game to prove himself. So
you think so?
Yeah, I do.
I'm not sure. I think we're in for a bit of Jamie Dobie in that first game.
I wouldn't be surprised if Dobie's in the team, but I just have a feeling that we might see him on the wing against Fiji.
You don't want that. You don't want to be on the wing against Fiji.
I just think it's a big ask for, you know, when you look at the options. Darcy and Duhan are obviously going to play against the Springboks, but I think Aaron.
You reckon?
Yeah, I think so. I think I didn't until probably 10 days ago, and then when Kyle Steyn pulled up, I thought this is probably the way back in for Darcy particularly. I know people have said Duhan's defence leaves a bit to be desired, but I think he does such incredible things with the ball that so he's hard to leave out. Who would your back 3 be? I'm interested.
My back 3, well, 15's Blair. So are we talking for the big event, for the main game?
Well, let's go for Fiji first.
So the team I would like to see play against Fiji would be Dobie at scrum half, Hastings at 10. I'd then like to see what I'd actually love to see Stafford and Curry.
Yeah.
And then Blair's not available.
Where you used to teach.
I didn't teach any of them. I can't even take any reflected glory on that lot. And then I think it gets kind of interesting because Harry Patterson's not played a lot of rugby. But I doubt you're going to go Darcy Duan against Fiji when they're going to have to front up the following week. But I think maybe Darcy needs to play. So I'd have Darcy on one, Kyle Rowe, and maybe Harry Patterson at fullback.
I think that's interesting because I was at that A game. I think I said to you, I can't remember if it was on here at the weekend, but I thought Harry Patterson looked like he needed another. He'll probably get another game for Sunday this weekend.
Yeah,
I just think he looked that wee touch short of them being able to step in.
And he has to be. He has to be. But this is the sort of situation because you then look like maybe I've gone a bit too biased there, but because you've still got Hugh Jones, so maybe Hugh Jones fills in at 15, which means Kyle Rowe comes on ding-a-ling, or maybe Kyle plays 15. There's a few options there. I would also love to see the Tuipulotus, like whatever else I think, to play next to your brother. And I'm not sure they're going to get that in the big dance. So
can we just say how good would it be to see Sione at 12, first game as captain, and his brother at 13? Like, whatever else you think about it, as brothers.
No, that's what I mean. It's like when you
pretty cool.
Unreal. And if you've got them and you've got the Fagersons up front, brothers have always played a big part in rugby, and the stories are class. Springboks in Scotland is going to be a big Do you know what, Leanne? What worries me about it is the physicality is going to make me watch it through my fingers because it'll just scare me. And I think the Springboks will go full blown against Scotland.
I think they will as well. I think when you look at their squad, it's like a who's who, rugby who's who. It's an incredible.
And even if it's not full blown, even if you took, say, 7 second string boys into the starting 15, it's still ridiculous. Like it's not. You're losing a percentage of quality. You're losing 2 or 3% rather than. The depth of that Springbok squad scares me.
That's what they've done so well this year, is actually to say, okay, well, a lot of these guys are now into their 30s. Let's build the depth and bring players in. And some of the players who've kind of come onto the scene this year are, you look at somebody like Willie LaRue for years has had that 15 jersey, and then Apolele Fassi this year has just been unbelievable. He's probably one of their best players.
That laddie's got a bit of talent.
Craig says he doesn't think the Springboks will go full blown with England 6 days later. It's interesting,
and I hear you, Craig, but the mentality of Erasmus and that Springbok squad, to me, it's Razzie doesn't care what happens tomorrow. I don't think and he will demand, talking tournament, talking whatever, you have to be able to back it up. No quarter, give it, if it means they tailor training, I hear you, Craig, but Glasgow go to South Africa, they win a competition. Some of the South Africa, they run the Sharks close. I think Razzie wants to stick 30 on Scotland and then go into England feeling pretty happy with life.
I think, just to echo that, I think one of the things you might see is the rotation of the bomb squad. So, for example, Oxenche has perennially started at loosehead. Stephen Kitsoff's obviously injured. He might sit on the bench against Scotland, but he might play 35 minutes to get him ready to start at Twickenham. or
But
Ali
even
Ansari.
there's what he has done is he's played folk for 30 minutes and brought the squad on with 10 minutes to go the first half.
Yeah, and I think this is
and it's so rather than look at it as 6 days, it's right. If he plays 30 minutes there, he can play whatever, he can play 50 minutes there. So it might not be full blown for 80 minutes, but it'll not be far off.
And I think that to Greg's latest point, it'll still be a good squad, and it is 6.5 a dozen. I think that is where the Springboks are, that they now have 2, probably 3 players for every position. Just before we move on, Mikey says Dobie will get the Portugal game. I think at 9, that is probably right. I think I would imagine he'll play at 9. I think we might see him on the wing against Fiji.
I don't know. Why not give Ali Price the Portugal game? Like Ali Price he's experienced, he's been there. What are we going to learn? Do we put him in against Springboks or Australia? So maybe Portugal's where Ali Price gets his dominant game time because Dobie's going to sit on the bench against Australia, the Springboks, and get 30 minutes.
And again, when you look at if there's a game Sione is going to miss, it'll be Portugal. He's obviously going to play the first one because that's the first one of the series. He'll be fit, presumably. Portugal, in between the 2 kind of big ones, is handy to give him a rest. So you would want players with good experience. You don't want to just throw a load of kids in because, Portugal nearly caused a couple of upsets at the World Cup. So having somebody with Ali's experience could be handy in that respect.
Yeah, it's yeah, okay. I mean the backs. Aaron Reid, can he play in the first game? I wonder about his selection because if you're then not going to use him against South Africa, he has to play against Portugal, and then does he get a kick against Australia as well? Otherwise, what have you learned about Aaron Reid? Tom Jordan, it doesn't qualify until after Fiji. Am I right in saying that?
No, he is qualified to play against Fiji.
Right. Okay. Right. Let's rewind the tape then. Apologies. That's my lack of knowledge or research.
No, that was a bit of a red herring that we kind of cleared up today. So I don't blame you for that at all. I think it was certainly my understanding before this morning that he wasn't qualified until after. But look, I think the fact
if that's the case, I think he plays. I think he'll play against Fiji.
Yeah, I think he will too, and I think he's perfect. I think when you look at who's available, there's 3 10s in that squad. Adam Hastings has got plenty of experience. I think he'll start. I think the fact that Tom Jordan can play 10 and 12 means he's on the bench against Fiji and he'll make his debut.
I think there's going to be a few. I think some of those uncapped players will play against Fiji. Give boys a little bit longer to prep for the Springboks. Right. Rory Hutchison's in. Pleased with that. I hope he gets used. It's another tough one because he can't play Fiji. He's unlikely to go in against the Springboks, which then means you're looking at Rory Hutchison against Portugal. And I would like to, come on, let's see him against Australia. Give him, we've heard about him for a long time. He did really well at age group, and then he's been in and out and flirted, and he's not really while I would rather it was the strongest 15 that played every week, because it's a Scotland cap and all those things that I've moaned about forever. We're never going to know unless we give him a shot. And it is probably disrespectful, but it's not going to be against Portugal. Him playing 80 minutes against Portugal isn't really going to give us any more knowledge than we had today.
No, I think you're right. And I think if you look back a few years, the game that we put 50 points on Australia at Murrayfield, Stuart Hogg pulled it in the warm-up and Byron McGuigan was kind of thrown in on the wing and he scored 2 tries. And, Scotland coaches will have learned more about Byron McGuigan from that than in playing 50 games for Sale. I think somebody like Hutchinson has to be in this squad because he deserves a chance to play in one of those big 2 games. I think it's pointless having somebody like him of his experience, and we know his quality from the Premiership, to play against Portugal and to play in an A international against Chile. I think that is it doesn't make any sense. And you would be better having, a young Scottish player, a Kerr Yule, somebody like that in that setup for the same reasons that Freddie Douglas is in it. If you're not going to use Rory Hutchinson in the big 2 or 3 games, the big 2 games.
So, just while you were talking there, I've written down what I think Gregor will pick as his first line test team. Kinghorn, Graham, Jones, Tuipulotu, Duhan, Finn, Ben White, with a bench of only 2, Dobie, Tom Jordan.
Yeah, I think that's yeah, I agree. I think that's pretty spot on.
That's thinking he's only going to go 2 on the bench. Dobie gives him 9 and wing. Tom Jordan gives 10, 12 with the option that Jones can go back to 15 if anything was to happen to Blair. But you're not subbing Blair Kinghorn. You're not subbing Finn Russell. So, and you're not subbing Sione. So realistically, the issue I have with my bench selection is Dobie's only going to come in for Ben White, which would make sense because everybody changes their scrum half unless it's, well, I don't actually know many scrum halves that are playing 80 minutes. But Tom Jordan only really comes on for Hugh Jones, which would mean Sione moving to 13.
Yes, I think though, to be fair,
it means Darcy and Duhan are playing 80 minutes as well. Yeah,
and I think probably barring an injury, that I think most would kind of say, yeah, we accept that. How often do you see Duhan dragged off, even when he's had a kind of difficult game? Gregor, I think, is of the notion that leave him out there because
he might produce something in the last 5 seconds that
he might do something incredible. And Darcy's the same. Darcy's obviously has injury problems, so you would worry from that point of view in case something goes wrong there. But Dobie would be able to step in and do a more than adequate job on the wing. I think the interesting one for me there, Bruce, is that I'm a wee bit frustrated because George Horn played a bit on the wing in his kind of early Scotland days. And then that seems to have been an experiment that's really been tried and worked with Dobie. But you're looking at that saying, well, if George Horn doesn't start, and I think you're right, I think Ben White plays the big 2 because of his kicking. George Horn, who's been one of Glasgow's best players for the past 14, 15 months, doesn't get a sniff. And it feels like a waste. It feels like somebody who, just on that, again, Craig says here, has Ben White not played because of injury or selection and form? I think it is the latter. I don't know of him having an injury. But, yeah, he certainly, I think he's played 3 of Toulon's 7 games this season. So, yeah, he's maybe coming in a wee bit underdone.
I know, but that's one of those. You can look at that any way you like. He's hungry and he's fit and he's fresh. It's entirely situational. There's folk who play week in, week out who back up week in, week out. There's some who play week in, week out and need a rest and they're a bit sore. And so we don't know enough. We're just talking, but we're given an opinion. And we've not really mentioned Curry, who I think's class. Stafford. They've come around at a time that's a bit unfortunate because Sione makes it, there's only actually one centre spot left and there's competition there because Hugh Jones is tried and tested. Hutchison's come in. We've now brought another Tuipulotu in. Tom Jordan all of a sudden arrives. So where Matt Curry and Stafford probably were being considered, it's actually much, much tougher to get them in the team. And I don't think either of them are necessarily bench players.
I think that's
unless it's 3 on the bench, and even then, you're then saying, right, we're putting in a centre, but we're never going to take Sione off. So actually, you're only covering 13, and we've probably got enough to wiggle and jiggle. So I don't know. Right, let's go up front because you got a bit upset at me there. So I'm gonna start where I kind of finished with the backs. I've picked what I think Gregor will have as his first choice. Pierre, Ashman, Zander, Gilco, Scott Cummings, Fagerson, Darge, Dempsey.
No arguments for me again. I think you've got that.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
I think that's.
So I think what's maybe more, who backs up Pierre? Suz or Jamie?
I would go Rory Sutherland. I think that is up for more debate. I think
because all three of them are available for all 4 games. So there's a high chance that when you look at it at the end of the 4 games, they've potentially actually all played the same minutes.
Yeah, and I think that's not a bad thing. Like, let's be completely clear that Pierre is vitally important to Scotland, but let's make sure we get to the Six Nations and he's fit, because that would be a bit of a disaster from a Scottish point of view if you then lose him out of that pool. I think it's been interesting to see Sutherland and Batty kind of rotated by Franco at Glasgow. I think Franco will have to manage them carefully throughout the whole season to make sure that 2 international props are getting enough game time, and I think that we'll see probably them both get a start. But I would be stunned if Pierre doesn't play the big 2 games from the start. I think hooker is interesting because I said I'm totally in agreement that Ashman probably is in pole position, but actually when you look at the other 2, Dylan Richardson for me was probably one of the standouts from the summer, and Paddy Harrison's been terrific for Edinburgh in the last couple of weeks. Is it too much to ask Paddy to step up to play international rugby? I don't think so. I think he's proved with every step up he's made.
So on that, I think Paddy starts against Fiji.
Yeah, I probably agree. So your team's for the South Africa game, is it?
That was what I think would be the sort of first choice team.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I do wonder, the one that I would probably change, and it wouldn't take much to get me to change, would be that he starts Richardson instead of Ashman.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Can you imagine being Dylan Richardson at hooker against the Springboks? Like, if anybody's getting a hard time, Pierre possibly, but Dylan Richardson, he must be ready with a bulletproof vest. Like, that's going to be brutal.
But also think of the personal ammunition for him to not want to, or to want to play well against some of his Sharks teammates, and to prove a bit of a point, to South African rugby in general. I think that is an interesting one. I think I would be stunned if Dylan Richardson wasn't involved against the Boks in some way.
I think he has to be, because he's not going to be against Fiji. So you're asking quite a lot of a young hooker, plus Paddy, who's still a young hooker, and of Ashman.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot to go in there. I think Dylan Richardson probably comes into that squad for the Springboks, sorry, not the Springbok squad, and brings an energy, brings an experience, brings a kind of reliability that maybe doesn't start, but to be in the squad. The second row,
before we move on, I think it's worth stating there, when we're talking about Dylan, he and Alex Craig, because they're playing for clubs outside of Scotland, won't be available for that. So we're right to reference that, but we double checked that today, and so Alex Craig and who plays for the Scarlets, and Dylan at the Sharks won't be available, as well as all the English and French-based players for that Fiji game. So it means you really are picking just from Edinburgh and Glasgow, which has left Scotland short, or will leave Scotland short at tight head for that game, should there be an injury. Darcy Ray will be on the bench, I would imagine, in backup to Xander. But the options beyond them.
Well, why start Xander against Fiji?
Yeah, I mean, totally. You could start Darcy Ray.
You're not learning. And Darcy Ray, like, I mean, you could write what I know about propping on this 10p piece that I found in my joggy bottoms pocket there, which I'm quite chuffed about because that might pay for some heating.
Shame you had to find that before the holiday.
Katie could have sat next to me. I didn't know anything about propping, right? I've got a little bit, tiny little bit, but Darcy Ray had a bit of a tough time. He's come to Edinburgh, hardly got a shot, and then this year, God love Sean, he started what was probably his second choice front row, played well, brings on, he's probably is seen as his first choice front row, and Darcy Ray looks like he's URC level. There's nothing to say can he do it against Fiji? Are Fiji above a URC level in the front row?
I think probably now, as a collective unit, I think they probably are. But I think it is a good opportunity for him to show that he's up to that international level and actually stake a bit of a claim to be on the bench for.
Yeah, and the Scott, you're right. So apologies, I was maybe a bit, but Scotland are above or should be above a URC level, and him as
definitely.
part of it should mean I don't think there's any reason why Darcy Ray can't start against Fiji. Now, some props may be watching this going, I'm going to make a comment and tell him exactly about propping. So just wait for the front row union to get a bit angry and start hammering away at their keyboard if their fingers aren't too big. But that's I think that's one of those moves for the future. Like Xander, can he be expected to play against the Springboks? I would love him to, because I still think it's a thing that should be able to happen. But in the real world against the Boks, when they bring on a fresh front row with 30 minutes to go and you've had 50 minutes of getting your trousers handed to you, he could probably do with a bit of backup. So second row, talk me through your second row, because I went straight to Gilco and Cummings because I'm probably unfamiliar with some of the other second rows there because I don't know enough about them.
I think for me, that's the first choice. That's
because it's weird seeing a Scotland squad with no grey in it. Like we've got no shades of grey.
Yes, 0 shades of grey, and only 50% of that is through Gregor's choosing. He said today that I think basically he would have picked Johnny Gray, but between Johnny himself and Bordeaux, they've decided that it would be better for Johnny to rest, having played 6 weeks of rugby after 18 months out injured, than it would for Johnny to come over and play for Scotland. I think that's a real disappointment. I think, yes, we've got second rows, and there are plenty of them in the squad. Johnny Gray is an international class second row who should be in the squad, and he should want to play for his country. Gregor said today there definitely is a way back for him, but he's handed the opportunity now to others to go and kind of cement their places in the squad. So the other options, I suppose, than the two you've named, Alex Samuel, it's his first official call-up. He's trained with Scotland squads in the past, alongside Max Williamson, who was very, very good for Glasgow last season, won his first caps in the summer. I think the two of them, for me, are more... They're both more a Grant Gilchrist than they are a Scott Cummings, if that makes sense. I think they're both the kind of...
Which for Fiji's not a bad thing, because Gilco maybe gets a hit out, or maybe he doesn't, and maybe Gregor gives each of them 40 to see what happens, and as a trial to who's on the bench for Gilco the week after, or does Alec Craig come straight onto the bench against the Boks?
Yeah, and Alex Craig's probably the one of the five that offers you the best blend of he's very, very good carrier, but has maybe got a wee bit more of the soft skills than Samuel or Williamson that would align him more to kind of Scott Cummings. So it's a good blend of a group. Then I suppose that hybrid forward, the kind of back row, second row, is covered off by Gregor Brown. obviously went to the bin for Glasgow at the weekend, but has been in reasonably good form otherwise. I think probably at international level, Gregor sees him more as a 6, but he's done a job for Glasgow in the second row, so I'm sure he could slot in there. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in there for the A team. Interesting today, Gregor name-checked Cam Henderson at Leicester, who won his first cap against Italy before the World Cup. He's still out injured with a kind of reasonably long-term knee, I think it is. But, you always pick up the odd name that is dropped in that's not in the squad, and his was mentioned by Gregor, and I think there's a video on the Scotland Rugby News Facebook page and social media channels that was basically Gregor paying tribute to Richie Gray, because I think this is the end of the road with Scotland for Richie, with the move to Japan coming up. And given the fact he hasn't played for a few weeks for Glasgow, I think that probably, explains the lack of selection there. But what a player he's been for Scotland over the years.
Aye, and it's a shame because it feels to me like there's still a bit there. Sort of rewinding the tape a wee bit about folk know there. Now the backs, there's probably not too many surprises. Like Ben Healy, it would be tough for him to be in, and because Tom Jordan's arrived as well, there's not too many. But I do wonder, Cam Redpath, like as I said, we're at a point of centres. You add Tuipulotu and Jordan, and all of a sudden Cam Redpath is not even really being discussed.
Bad news. Cam Redpath is injured. So Bath said at the weekend that he had picked up a bit of a niggle on his hamstring. I think my understanding is that it's a wee bit more than that, and basically wouldn't have been in contention. I think we wouldn't have played the first game anyway.
Who's that kid upset in a previous life? Like he cannot cut a break. Okay, well, apologies, and hopefully Cam gets back fit. So the back row, I don't think, I could be wrong, but I don't think there's too many doubts in Fagerson, Darge, Dempsey. Is there? Is that the first choice?
I think it kind of has to be. I think that they've played so well. And I think we spoke about this, to go back to Freddie Douglas, that Liam McConnell, Freddie Douglas, Tom Curry back row has played so well as a unit that, like I've said 3 or 4 times to you, I just want to take the 3 of them and drop them into a team because they play so well together and they've got such a good understanding of each other's games. Well, for that, see the Glasgow back row. I think it feels a silly decision to break them up because they've played so well and delivered in those big games. And then
do you rest all 3 of them for Fiji? And you go Muncaster, Ritchie, Crosby?
And again, the continuity of that will help. If you did throw somebody like a Muncaster in, he's got 2 of his Edinburgh mates alongside him.
So, because Gregor, Jamie, it seemed for Gregor, Jamie was all or nothing. You're either in the starting 15 and you're captain, or you're not in the 23. And we're back to, when I initially listed my back line, I only had 2 backs on the bench, assuming there's going to be 6 forwards against the Springboks. Now maybe and there's a high chance I'm wrong. It happened once before. But how does he make up his bench? You give 3 front rows, so you've now got 3 players. Do you go 1 second row, 1 kind of? I don't know if there's many hybrid back row, front row there. Second row there. You've got Richardson, who could probably fill a jersey in the back row. But are you going one lock and 2 back rows?
I think probably with the makeup of the squad and the fact that Sam Skinner isn't available, who I think is probably the hybrid that you would want to play the Springboks. I think you probably then are looking at Jamie Ritchie and another back row, and one of the second rows is on the bench. that could be complete nonsense, and Gregor could go 2 second rows and have somebody, have Jamie on the bench
6,
to
7,
cover
8.
6 and 7, and then Matt Fagerson can play 8, and
because Muncaster back to being on form, that you're possibly saying Muncaster's ahead.
Yeah, and I think this is it. Jamie finished the season brilliantly at the end of last season, but you would say that Muncaster, of the Edinburgh back rows in the squad, is the man in the best form.
But Jamie, I mean, that hurt Jamie. Not being in the Six Nations team hurt Jamie, and the way he responded, he did it with performance. Like his Edinburgh season, although Edinburgh found it tough, it seemed like Jamie was on a one-man crusade. And it's been a tough start to the season, not really through any, but a team, a collective, a squad has been difficult, which has made it probably difficult for us to be talking about him being in the starting 15, because the three amigos from Glasgow have, I think, probably made 6, 7, and 8 theirs. So then you're looking at, right, how do you make an impact off the bench? Jamie coming off the bench will want turnovers, will want work rate, will, his kick chase for Edinburgh is, he's the one competing against the Springboks. There's likely going to be a fair bit of ball in the air. So does Jamie's aerial work become even more important?
And I think the point you made about Dylan Richardson's an interesting one, because I wonder if that tempers the thinking that you do go 2 second rows on the bench and you have almost a like for like. Let's say Gregor sees Alex Craig as the replacement for Cummings, and Max Williamson's the replacement for Gilchrist, and with 55 minutes, you throw them both on. You've then got Dylan Richardson, who you hold back because he could potentially play front row or back row if you need him to. It gives you that flexibility. And if you get an injury, remember, if there was to be a problem, they would be able to bring back Ashman if that necessitated a move, because you need to have a hooker on the pitch all the time. So
I wonder of that back row, Darge has been substituted. And I don't know, maybe it's his numbers, maybe it's, they're the data analytics for these guys is the astrophysics, let's face it. But I wonder, who do you bring Jamie on for? Do you bring him on for Darge, who's vice captain? Are you bringing him on for Fagerson or Dempsey, who are the ball carriers, the physicality that you're probably going to need and want against the box? But Jamie has that. I'm probably at a point, if he made me pick a 15, I don't think I'd be far away from Gregor's 15. What I don't think I can do is pick his 8 on the bench.
And I think you're right. I think what will be interesting as well is then the back row feels like there's maybe 4 in contention for 3 spots. And I think where Gregor's got to find a balance here is, okay, how do I keep Gregor Brown, Luke Crosby, Josh Bayliss? How do I keep them going, knowing that their only opportunities are going to come against, let's be honest, Portugal, and particularly in the case of Bayliss, Portugal.
See, Gregor quite likes Bayliss, though. I think there seems to I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the way they look at each other across the breakfast buffet. But Josh, I feel like there's a leaning towards Bayliss. I think he's potentially going to play against Aussie.
I think Bayliss is the one that stands out for me as being totally different to everybody else. And I think if you go 2 back row on that 6-2 bench, he's in. Because if there's an emergency, he does a job in the backs because he is seriously quick. I like Josh Bayliss. I think he's unlucky because in another era, he has 40 Scotland caps.
Hey, in another era, I've got 40 Scotland caps. I'm not sure what era it is.
I think you mean a parallel universe, never mind different era.
Possibly. Although that scientist on the telly says there is another bit to the universe, so maybe I should go and play there.
Maybe you should try.
when you look at this autumn, it's not like the Six Nations. For the Six Nations, you're picking the strongest team every week, or not every week, every game. You get what I mean?
Yep.
For this, it's such a guessing game. Like, what do you do against Fiji? Do you go full blown? Nobody that's going to be featuring against the Springboks starts in the 15. Does he try new things? Does he give caps to folk that haven't got them or got many? You're not. There's players in there that I look at and I think, I'm not sure over the 4 games I would give them a game. But what's the point in taking them if you're not going to give them a game? So
this is it.
And we've gone, obviously, Fiji, because it narrows the squad so much. Against Fiji, there's not many of them are not many of those who are available won't feature against Fiji, if you see what I mean.
Yep.
So you're only losing, like, is that a chance to say to Harry Patterson, right, this is a chance for you to, you play against Fiji, you play against Portugal. Like, you get 2 more caps, more experience, international level, Murrayfield, yada, yada. Like, I don't know. I don't know how he's going to go. And then there's players in there who are not Edinburgh and Glasgow who it feels to me like their only chance is against Portugal.
Yeah.
And then that will mean almost 23 swap out of the Springboks to play against Portugal. And then they all swap out when it's Australia time.
Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if what happens after the Portugal game is that players are essentially dropped, left out of the senior squad, and they go and then become Scotland A, which is a completely separate thing. And some players go back to their clubs, and we see a mix of this squad and some of the 20s guys, the guys who've maybe been playing on the fringes of the 2 pro teams, and maybe a couple who've played for Edinburgh, Glasgow A. They play against Chile.
When you look at, so on a match day, they take 30 players. You look at the warm up and there's heaps of boys there. So there's 4 scrum halves, 4 hookers. Am I right?
Yes.
4 hookers. So there needs you need to have 3 of those things at least on at the Australia game. So you've got your starting hooker, your bench hooker, and then the one who's there in case somebody turns their ankle in the warm up.
But that
there
might
are players. There are definitely players that need to come in for the A game. So is that Gus Waugh, or is that Ben Velikot?
Or Ben Afshar?
Or Ben Afshar, because Ben Afshar is a bit like Freddy Douglas. It's an A cap. Maybe that's your shot, Ben, and you come. And there's probably others.
I think on that, if you look at, by that time, somebody like a Paddy Harrison will have spent, 2 or 3 weeks in the Scotland setup. If he's not picked to play Australia, he'll probably then be involved with the A's. Whatever of the 3 hookers is not involved against the Wallabies will then go and play for the A team. And I would be surprised if there's not a few lads get hooked at half-time or early second half, and they're then the backup, the emergency glass.
I'm not sure that in this day and age that's the kind of thing that happens. I'm not sure boys can turn out on a Friday night, get to their scratcher after however long, and be expected to be up and ready to go for Aussie on the Saturday. I would love it. Like, that's gold to me.
They would then be the third choice, the trainer.
No, I get that, but if something happens, you're now in.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And I'm not sure that professional teams take that risk. The olden days of playing for the 2s on a Friday and benching for the 1s on a Saturday, or playing for the 2s at 1 o'clock and benching for the 1s at 3 o'clock. I'm not sure that's going to happen. There's enough players that need the experience. I would love to think Paddy would stick 40 in on the Friday night in an A game, play on the Saturday, and then has to start at hooker because the other 2 have had a dodgy mince pie in the morning, and he sticks in 80 and gets player of the match. Like, step forward, Paddy Harrison.
But does that then mean, you look at the options, look at Hooker, for example. Does that then mean Dave Cherry and
Harry
Gregor
Morris,
Hiddleston?
Gregor Hiddleston. Well, there's not Gregor Hiddleston. He could start an A game.
And that's going to be good experience for them. You look at somebody like Grant Stewart, who's got obviously a senior cap, but has been out the picture for a long time. Gus Fraser at Glasgow. So there are options.
Hey, well,
I think.
Where's Johnny Matthews?
Incredibly, Johnny Matthews is just not selected.
See, so
I can't believe it's taken us an hour to get to the Johnny Matthews subject. But
I'm surprised he's not captain.
I mean, in your team, he would be captain. He'd probably play 10, and he'd kick.
I'd have him goal kicking.
Yeah, like Lana did for the women's team. Definitely, Johnny Matthews would be, and he would be kicking off a pile of sand.
But what does he need to do? Like, what more can Johnny Matthews do?
I honestly think nothing. I think there is. I just don't see it. I just don't see it happening in the long term. I don't know why, but if he was going to be in, he was injured in the summer, so okay, I can get my head around that. George Turner's away, Stuart McInally's retired, Fraser Brown's retired, and still we don't pick Johnny Matthews. I just
one cap, one try.
Yeah. One win, 100% international win record. Thanks very much.
Right, here, like Johnny Matthews scores a lot of tries for Glasgow, right? Johnny Matthews has scored more tries for Scotland than Roger Baird.
Which is an incredible stat.
God love Roger. Roger, he was on the cycle we did to Rome. I've known Roger for a long time. Melrose Sevens medal when he was still at school. British Lion, hasn't scored for Scotland. Johnny Matthews, one cap, one try. Like, I'll get my coat.
Which would you rather, eh? Which would you rather?
Well, I would take either, to be honest. Johnny. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway,
it's clear. I think it's clear now, and I think for the Glasgow fans who continually ask on social media, what's Johnny Matthews got to do? I just don't think it's going to happen. I think it's because he's got a Scotland cap, he's probably not that attractive to some of the English clubs because he's not English qualified. Yep. But when you look at clubs like Newcastle, who have recruited boys who are not going to be away for international duty because it means they get them week in, week out, Johnny Matthews must be an attractive proposition to clubs like that. And for the same reason, he probably commands, a bit extra of Glasgow's budget because, I imagine behind the closed doors they know Johnny Matthews isn't going to be away with Scotland, and we're going to have him. And probably when you look at it, the writing's on the wall, and the fact that Glasgow didn't feel the need to bring in an experienced senior replacement for George Turner, they opted to go down the route of bringing Grant Stewart back. And
well, remember Fraser's away as well, so Fraser and Turner both leave.
Yeah, and they've replaced one of them. They've got two young guys, but they've obviously known for a while that Johnny's going to be there for the majority of the season. So I just think whatever's going on, we'll probably won't know. But I just can't see a way that Johnny then breaks into the Scotland squad, having been left out this time. You never know.
I hope Johnny gets to play for the Barbarians. I hope he gets
Johnny
a crack
Matthews
with
in
the
a Barbarians jersey would be very, very good value for everybody concerned. The Babas would love him.
And then I think he's going, right, I think I'm going to Japan. See you later.
Well, if he goes to Japan, he could send George back on the return flight.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I think the kid's outside, he's not a kid anymore, but do you know the first time I saw Johnny Matthews, he was playing in a social sevens in England, and Fraser Hartness tapped me on the shoulder and went, "He's coming up to Boroughmuir next year." And I was like, "All right, looks all right." Never did I think he was going to become my hero, and I was going to be wearing Johnny Matthews pajamas. Like at no point did I think that was going to happen.
Yeah, and I remember when he played for Boroughmuir and I think he scored more than 20 tries in a Premiership season back in the day. And even then, I didn't think this guy's got what it takes to do that for Glasgow, and they'll win the URC, and he'll be their hooker. Like,
class.
You know, but I think just on that, Gregor said today that age, I don't think age is counted against him. So, you know, Johnny's 31. If you look, Grant Gilchrist's 34. I think Richie Gray would have been in contention if he'd played for Glasgow more recently than he has. He's 35. So I don't think Gregor's looked at it and gone, oh, well, we need to build depth for the next 2 or 3 seasons. So actually, Johnny Matthews is out. So
Grant Gilchrist, 34.
Yeah.
I taught Grant Gilchrist. You know that?
I didn't, but it explains a lot about both him and you.
You didn't know that?
I didn't.
I can't believe that we've known each other for so long. We've mentioned Grant Gilchrist's name that many times, and I've never told you that I taught him, and he probably owes it all to his PE teacher.
There you go.
And whenever I say that to him, he goes, "Aye, Mr. McMichael was brilliant for me." Gilco and Sean Kennedy, Stuart Edwards and Glenn Bryce, because we had to team up with Allo Academy for rugby. Glenn Bryce, geez, he was a pleasure to be in charge of. I didn't get paid enough money to look after him. What a boy Bryce is. Jeez.
They were some team. That Stirling County team was some team.
It wasn't Stirling County, it was the mighty Lawrence Hill Academy, my man. Lawrence Hill Academy, where dreams are made. Alan Hansen, John Manson, Grant Gilchrist, Sean Kennedy. It all happened at the mighty Lawrence Hill. Right, pal. Anything else?
I don't think so. I think we've just about dissected the Scotland squad suitably, so we'll leave it there, and I think we'll...
Duke Gregor's been watching going, actually, I never thought of that. Bruce makes a valid point there. I think because we know Gregor tunes in. I don't think absolutely. He cares. I don't think he cares about your opinion. He got to speak to you today. He tuned in the night to hear what Bruce had to say. And Gregor Townsend, another Gala Academy product, of course. So a long line of fine products coming out of that school.
You're getting all the name checks in tonight, aren't you?
You are indeed. I was at a wedding at the weekend and I bumped into boys I played Scottish schoolboys with. Hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. Because we all treated each other as if it was yesterday, asking about, do you ever see, they were like that to me, do you ever see Pete Coburn? And I was going to them, have you seen Tim Parrott recently? As if we've never left each other, as if we've never left our mates that we were pals when we were 17. Have you seen Beezer and Mitchell recently?
But how often does that happen in rugby, that you spark up a conversation with somebody you played with 20 years ago and it's like you've never, you've always just been pals?
How good were we in 1997? I tell you what, peaked in 97. It's slippery slope for there, my man. Slippery slope. Great to see you, fella. That's been a long one tonight. I'll be putting in for overtime tonight, and we'll get that because it's £4 for 4 months. I like what you've done there because it was £12 for 12 months, and now it's £4 for 4 months. I like that. I'm a big fan of that. So £4, sign up. You can get access to all that great content from Gav and his band of merry scribes. They're a good bunch of people. Big fella, good to see you. Have a great weekend, and we'll catch up next week.
Always a pleasure. Thanks very much, Bruce. You have a good weekend too, and I'll see you next time.
I might go and get the heating on, or maybe I'll just put another jumper on.
Put that 10p to good use.
I will. Cheers, fella. Look after each other.